joining me today. For those of you that haven't joined us before, every week I have a conversation with someone about the Camino de Santiago. I'm Rebecca Weston from the Camino Calls, and I help people plan their walks on the Camino de Santiago and also lead small group trips on the Camino de Santiago. Dora and I have known each other for over 20 years, but as happens when people end up moving from one place to another, we've mostly kept in touch lately over social media. But when I saw that she was in Santiago de Compostela, I was, of course, delighted, especially because at the time I was living just a few hours away. But sadly, by the time it all worked out, she was not there any longer. But I definitely wanted to have a conversation with her, and of course, hear all about her Camino and her Camino tales. And so I invited her to join us here on Camino Conversations. So, Dora, thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, first question I ask most of my folks who have done the Camino is tell us how you first learned about the Camino de Santiago.
I realized that I had heard about the Camino over, it's over, but about 30 years ago when I studied abroad in Spain. And one of the trips that they took us on in the study abroad program was to Santiago de Compostela. And I remember them talking about pilgrims, but either I had forgotten that they told me about the Camino or that I um, just didn't realize that it was an organized thing that people did. Um, I was familiar more with, for example, in Mexico City, there is a cathedral there, and people go on their own. So it's a pilgrimage, but it's a personal pilgrimage. It's not something that's organized. Um, and then the way I relearned about the Camino is because I was planning at the time a family trip to Spain, and I we were looking. I decided I was going to hike. This whole idea of me hiking started because I did the rim to rim Grand Canyon hike in 2024, and I kind of got hooked. And I said, okay, every year I'm going to do some sort of hike. And so I said, well, what could I do? What kind of walk could I do while my family's off sightseeing? And that's how we stumbled. We really just stumbled upon the Camino. Like, this is a thing people do. Oh, that sounds okay. That's good. I wanted to do a well-known trail, and definitely the Camino de Santiago is extremely well known.
Mhm. Yeah, and 30 years ago, nowadays when people visit Santiago de Compostela, you can't help but see all the pilgrims coming in front of the cathedral. But 30 years ago, there weren't nearly as many pilgrims as there are today. So I could see how it might not have hit you as much as it would have, were you
Right.
to arrive in Santiago today. But there are a lot of people who have that story who the first they knew about the Camino was because they went to Santiago de Compostela to see everything that's there. And that's where they learned about the Camino. So very cool. Now, you said you were on a family trip, but you did not walk with your family. Can you tell us a little bit about who you walked with and why you chose to do that?
Yes. So the family thing fell by the wayside. Like, that part didn't work out, and I said, well, I'm still going. And so I went with one of my friends who I I think I've been sharing with her my experience with going to the Grand Canyon and how great that was. And she said, wow, that sounds like something that I'd want to do. And I said, okay, well, that's great because I don't have anyone to walk so far that has shown interest in doing this with me because I am not a solo hiker. And I'm not the kind of person that feels comfortable traveling to other countries on my own. I mean, Spain would have been a lot better because I speak the language, so I don't have to worry about that. But for me, I like to have someone with me to share the experience with and say, hey, look at that, look at this. And someone that would be with me the whole time uh to to enjoy the experience with and to talk to about it as opposed to just being on my own. And um that would have been worthwhile. But I also think it probably would have gotten boring for me had I been by myself for those 100
Mhm.
kilometers.
Gotcha, gotcha. And that's a big decision for a lot of people is should you go alone or with other people? And everybody has their thoughts on that. And I always say to people, hey, if you can go alone your first time, go for it. But I also say you know yourself best. And so that's awesome that you were like, no, here's the way I want to do this. And so that's what I'm going to do. And you talked about those 100 kilometers. So let's talk a little bit about the route you chose. You started in Lugo, Spain, which is the last 100 kilometers, about 62 miles of the Camino Primitivo. The Camino Primitivo, if you start it from where it starts in Oviedo, is considered one of the most challenging routes. So the first thing I asked you when we were talking earlier was, what are the last 100 kilometers as challenging as the rest of that route is supposed to be? So can you tell us, first of all, how did you end up choosing the Camino Primitivo?
We, how did we choose the Camino Primitivo? We considered other ones, but my friend and I are, uh, I don't know what the word would be. Like we like traditions. We like, uh, we both have work in higher education, or like the pomp and circumstance of, let's say, like graduation ceremonies. And we're like, this is a traditional one. We're doing this one because it's the original one, right? Like
Yes, yes.
that's what we're doing. But we were limited by how long we could be away. We both have families. We have kids still at home. And that was the biggest concern for us, having kids still at home and not wanting to be away for too long. We decided on the last 100 kilometers because, oh, this is going to sound so bad, but, or maybe it's not bad, but because that's the minimum you needed to do to get a certificate. And we're both, again, higher education. We're in the business of giving out degrees and certification. Like, I want another thing I could put on my wall. So I want that certificate. So that's why we decided to do the last 100 kilometers, minimum required.
And for those that don't know, the Camino Primitivo, it's called Primitivo. And Oviedo certainly claims this in all of their logos. The city of Oviedo claims, the origin of the Camino, because the story goes that when the supposed remains of Saint James were discovered, which is what people are actually walking towards in Santiago, is they discovered the remains of Saint James the Apostle. When they supposedly discovered those, one of the first people to walk to Santiago de Compostela, which wasn't even a town at that point, he was just walking to check out if this was legitimate or not, was King Alfonso the second, I believe, or it could be the first. I could be wrong on that. And he was the king of Asturias, and the capital of Asturias was, and still is today, Oviedo. And so he took off to check this out. And so that's how this has come to be considered the original Camino de Santiago. Also, for those that don't know, many people that hear about the Camino and want to do the Camino think there's just one route, there's one Camino de Santiago. And they're not even aware that the Camino is a network of trails across Europe, Western Europe, actually even further. And that people would walk to get to Santiago de Compostela. So there isn't one official route, but yes, different routes have their various claims to fame. And then you also mentioned the 100-kilometer rule, and that is also very common. Whenever there at the end of the Camino de Santiago, you can get a certificate that says that you completed it. And in order to get that certificate, you have to have walked at least 100 kilometers. Up until just recently, you had to have walked the last 100 kilometers into Santiago. They've changed that a little bit. You can now walk another area of the Camino and then just walk into Santiago separately and get your Compostela. So yeah, there's a variety of ways to do it. So that's why people choose to do that 100 kilometers.
Right. You also asked me about the level of difficulty.
Yes.
I thought that I would say that for me, it was easy. I would say I'm going to put a little bit of quotes on easy, or quotes,
because you just did the rim to rim on the Grand
yeah,
Canyon.
I did the rim to rim of the Grand Canyon, which I was on that march like I'm going to die. This is horrible. I mean, not being a little dramatic, but it was so difficult. It got to the point where I had an injury, and like every time they have steps in the Grand Canyon. So every time I took a little step there, It hurt. I was in so much pain. Uh, it was so hot. And so that really kind of felt like I, I mean, not a death march, but a bit dramatic, but you're like, why did I say to do this? And I was in so much pain. And the next day I was in so much pain, but this one was a lot better. So we broke it up in, into four, four different. So that was, first of all, that was easy. Four, we were walking at a decent pace. My friend walked slower than me, so I was able to walk slower. There were definitely some hills, up hills. I'm trying to think of there was one area where definitely like you're climbing, and that was hard. But at the same time, it was paved road, which was a lot better than, say, trying to get out of the Grand Canyon with just gravel and sand and things like that. So that's why I consider difficulty level easier. Also, because I made sure that I stretched at night after I finished and that I stretched the first thing in the morning. And between that stretching and staying very hydrated, I was not in pain. So that's why it was easier for me because I was not in pain.
Gotcha. And
And
when you say 4, do you mean 4 days you guys did it over?
yeah, we did it over 4 days. I'm
Okay.
trying to remember which I can look it up, but I would forget. I mean, I don't remember. I think I shared that with you where we
Where you
did
stopped.
about yeah, we broke it up into 4 days, and that also made it easier. And my friend wanted to, this is the part that was more difficult. In most hikes, I think, maybe this walk also, it's more the psychological aspect of it that can be hard versus like your body. And I had, I did a training, a formal training. I took the one that I received when I did the Grand Canyon trip and I adapted it to this one, which included uh, walking. I think I walked 18 miles in one
Mhm.
day at the end.
Wow.
Did that. And I also did stairs, not at the gym, but there's these actual stairs that go all the way up. I think I counted them. There's about 300 and something steps on one side
Yeah.
and about 200 and something steps on the other. And so I was prepared physically. I trained for this. I didn't just show up and say, I'm going to do this.
Mhm.
So that was really, that also helped. It was more, but so when I was doing on my hike, for example, my longest hike I did, I think I finished it in less than 4 hours. And so that was my idea. Oh, we're going to be walking about 4 or 5 hours a day, and then we'll just sit around. And my friend had other ideas. So we would walk, and again, we were walking slower than I wanted to. And then we would stop and have like some coffee. One time we had a meal. And it was just, so we were actually ended up stretching it out to like 8 hours of walking with all the stops. And that was like, okay, I didn't want to walk for this long. But, but, so my friend and I did not go a lot of people go for a personal, uh, experience or religious experience or, kind of like try to have a epiphany or a moment or something. That's not why we did it, but we still had a lot of really good conversations on the Camino. Uh, for example, at one point she says, "What is your hurry to get to the, the next stop and just finish? Like, what is it?" And then we had this whole conversation about that. And then I also joked that on this walk, she solved what I've been trying to solve for 20 years in therapy about my mother, relationship I have with her. I thought, oh, I think I just figured it. Okay, thank you.
That's
So that
amazing.
was so I had those kinds of experiences. We talked a lot. I learned, I mean, we're really good friends. We keep in touch. But I learned a lot about her that I didn't know.
Mhm.
And that in itself was also a really, really a great experience. Great experience. And if the countryside is beautiful, I'm glad we picked that. Um, there was a lot of things that I mentioned this to you, Rebecca, that I wish we had someone like you helping us because there's a lot of things I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know what that was. Um, I wish I would have known, and but it was good.
Hmm.
One other side note is that most people I know walk it, I think, but I did also see that there's certificates for people that bike it, and I have
Hmm.
seen bikers, and I think that one might have. There's more. Like it can't be 100K. I want to say like maybe 200 or
It's
something.
200 kilometers for bikers.
Right.
Yes.
And there's also an option. I didn't see any, but there's also an option for horseback, doing it on
Hmm.
horse.
There are. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And there are also people that do it in wheelchairs, that do it on forearm crutches.
Mm.
I mean, it's yeah.
Yes, I saw one group. I didn't, they were waiting, so we went ahead. We weren't walking with them, but there was a group of people that were there in wheelchairs, and they were going to be doing the Camino.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's another thing, the pavement, it was a lot more pavement than I expected.
Hmm.
But I also was, but there was, yeah, I expected it to be a lot more pavement. I don't know what I would say the last 100 kilometers maybe were, I don't know, 50. Yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
But it's just gravel.
Hmm.
So it was fine. Like it's just gravel. There's a few places where we have to walk around some mud, but
Hmm.
that's the
Hmm.
other thing that made it, I think to me, made it kind of easy.
Yeah. And I tell people too, like, you have to remember the Camino de Santiago was not created to go on the most beautiful trails and all that kind of stuff. It was created to get people to Santiago. So, and a lot of those
Right.
paths are now roads or, at least farm roads or whatever. So yeah, it's not always 100%, you know, hiking in the woods, for example. Um,
It's not, but I would still say that the last 100 kilometers were you walk into the cities, which is different. That's not,
mhm,
I wasn't expecting to, I mean, I did know that was happening, but it was still sort of uh strange because that's not something that I've experienced here in the US where your hikes are going to take you to urban areas. But whether you're on pavement or whether you're on the gravel, there is a lot of breathtaking scenery along the way. It's just wonderful. You could be walking on um you could be walking on, just the cement of the sidewalk. I mean, up the road, but what is around you is just pure countryside, beautiful trees. So it's still an experience.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, you talked about conversations you had with the person that you traveled with. Can you tell us, were there a lot of other people on the trail, and did you engage with some of the other people at all?
We did see other people on the trail. I did not engage with people as much because I'm an introvert and I'm like, oh, I got to talk to people. But
It's okay. It's okay.
but my friend, who's a lot more extroverted, definitely was more chatting it up with people. And then she interestingly ran into, there was a group of women that were also doing the Camino. They were a little older than us, and she met them on the train from Madrid up to Lugo. Yeah, Lugo.
Mhm.
And then she saw them again on the Camino. We were able to chat with them a little bit.
Awesome.
And yeah, but I think there's different, like you said, there's different types of people on the Camino. And there was a lot of them that were carrying their backpacks, like all their gear on their back. And that one was probably like a quick buen camino, because a lot of them looked really tired. Like they were. And then I also learned that, which we did not do that. We did we didn't do that. So we were not carrying our backpacks, and so they looked really tired. So we just took them up. But there were other people that we just chatted up with, but mostly this was the thing that we found kind of odd because we know that at some point where it converges with the Camino Frances, we definitely
Hmm.
saw a lot more people. But for the most part, until we went through the Camino Frances, there was a lot of times we were by ourselves.
Hmm.
We didn't
Hmm.
see other people. We didn't, we might pass people once in a while, but it was not the type of things where we were walking with people,
Hmm.
or found a group of people to walk with. I'm thinking of the movie The Way. Like we
Yeah.
did not
Yeah.
stumble upon other people to
Yes.
walk with.
Yes.
It was the two of us, and yeah, there was a lot of times we were just by ourselves.
Wonderful.
I
Yeah.
will say that once we got to Santiago de Compostela, it was my friend wanted to. We did see people that obviously had finished the Camino, but one thing my friend would have liked to have done is a gathering place where there were other people that had finished the Camino, but because we didn't hire you, Rebecca, we did not know about that.
I did write a post about this. Well, I'm trying to think if I wrote the post or if I'm thinking of writing it. If I wrote it, I will post it below. But of some of these places that exist in Santiago, where you can indeed process your experience. There's rooms in where you actually pick up your Compostela, and they're not really well advertised. They used to be better advertised, but when I was there last month, it wasn't as well known that upstairs, there is a room for French speaking pilgrims. There's a room for German speaking pilgrims, a room for English speaking pilgrims. And they have different, you can go the English one. It's you can go and have tea and chat, and they have reflection sessions. And there's also a place called the Pilgrim House, for people that are listening and taking notes for your own Camino de Santiago. There's a place called Pilgrim House. It's closed on Wednesdays and Sundays, but it is right there, not too far from the cathedral, also, that offers kind of that experience for reflection. But you're not alone, Dora, because my first Camino, I remember as well, I was like, it was almost jolting to get to Santiago de Compostela, and all of a sudden you have all these people and also all these tourists because it's such a big tourist town as well. Um,
It is
but
definitely a tourist town, and I we wish we would have spent a couple nights there too. We made that mistake. Like it would have been better to spend a couple nights. I had been there before, so it wasn't as big of a deal for me. I've been inside the cathedral, and I mean, obviously a lot has changed, but overall,
Mhm,
the
mhm,
cathedral's a big draw, and I had seen that. But my friend, I don't know if she just looked at the population and assumed that it was just going to be this little town with nothing to see or nothing to do. But by the time we got there, for example, it was too late to go to buy tickets to tour the entire cathedral.
mhm.
And then the next day we had to leave, so we didn't get to do that. So that would have been a good thing to know, to like maybe you might want to spend more time there.
That's great advice for people because, yeah, I usually tell people spend at least 2 nights in Santiago, at least get a full day in. And for people that are looking to do like the rooftop tour of the cathedral, I've laughed about on this before with people. Like it's one of those things that would never happen in the US. You're literally climbing over 3 different rooftops and then you're climbing back over them to get back. So it's not for the faint of heart. But yeah, a lot of that stuff, as the Camino has gotten more popular, and now has to be reserved in advance, unfortunately. But they're, depending on what it is and your flexibility, when you're, for those that are watching, when you're looking at the cathedral, the in the main square where you arrive, off to the left is the door for to buy all the tickets, to do various things inside the cathedral, and you can no longer enter the cathedral from that square. Obradillo. I'm even
I
though
was
I can speak
there.
Spanish, I
That's
can't say that
where
too well, but yeah. Yes,
when I went, that's where I entered from. So I was
me too.
surprised that
Yeah.
that wasn't a thing
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, my first Camino, you could walk in that door, and in the movie The Way, at the end, they walk in that main entrance, and that used to be how we would get in. But they did some restoration work on the Portico de Gloria, which is just inside that door, and because of the humidity, they decided to keep that closed for now. And you have to buy special tickets to go see the Portico de Gloria. So yeah, but there are plenty of things to do in Santiago de Compostela. And some people, to play tourist gets a little tricky. So, especially after walking a Camino. So I usually advise people, if you're going to combine the Camino with anything else, do your tourism stuff pre-Camino as opposed to post-Camino. Did you guys do any tourism after you finished, or did you go right back from there?
We did it because we combined it. So because we were, um, I myself, because I'd been there before. I mean, I haven't been everywhere, obviously, but it wasn't. I didn't have that feeling of I've never been to this country before. I want to see everything there is to see in this place.
Mhm.
Didn't do that. And a lot of the places where we were, they were really just small towns. There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot to see.
Mhm.
So what we did is we would get there. We would either uh, usually we got there a little like early enough so that we can uh, just clean up and then go out to dinner. Or sometimes we would just clean up and then it's too early for dinner, so we would walk around and look at some of the things like, oh, well, we should go look at this or we should go look at that. But it really we were probably hitting a maximum of like two or three tourist sites. Are We were just sort of walking in and taking in the city, and if something looked interesting, we would walk
Mhm.
in, but we didn't
Mhm.
really feel the need to sightsee so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think your approach is great if that's something that you really want to do, whereas us, where we were more okay, would be, okay, let's do this, let's do that, but there wasn't really anything
Mhm.
that uh we had like a busy itinerary of
Right, right.
sightseeing when we got to
And
each place.
and you can certainly, people do take rest days and see the bigger cities if they
Mhm.
do the Camino Frances and walk through Burgos or Pamplona or whatever, which is totally fine. But I'll have some people that are like, "Oh, we're gonna combine this with, sightseeing in Paris." And I say, "Okay, do that before you start the Camino." Um, because it's a very different experience, and to flip back into a sightseeing tourist in that way, is challenging for a lot of people. And I've had people that have done it anyway and have told me, "You know what? You were right. We should have done it before the Camino." But again, to each their own. It's just my 2 cents.
Well, I'd like to hear more about that. Is it because people are going on the Camino well, I'm not going to speculate. What is the reason why some people have regretted doing the sightseeing app?
Yeah, I think because you guys walked for 4 days. You have to remember too, a lot of people that do the last 100 kilometers are walking over 5 or 7 days. And then there's people that are walking Camino de Santiago routes for weeks. And so you're kind of in this zone. It's a very different way of seeing a country, by literally walking from one place to another. Like you said, you're not necessarily in a lot of tourist areas. You're really seeing the locals doing their local thing. You're meeting people. If you're one of those people that's into meeting people, you're meeting people from all over the world on a lot of these routes. And immediately people are helping each other. People are open to each other. People are. It's a whole little kind of world unto itself. And it's also a bit slower pace of life. You're literally walking from place to place. You haven't gotten in a bus, a train, a taxi, a plane for however many days, weeks, whatever. So there's a lot of different reasons that it can feel a little jarring. And I usually say to people, take a couple days just to A, enjoy Santiago de Compostela, or B, go out to Finisterre or Murcia. Those are two places that a lot of people like to visit after, that are still, you can actually walk out to them as part of the Camino. as well. And they're, just a time to reflect. And I think it just feels too sudden. And Joseph Campbell, who talks about the hero's journey, talks about this period, this turning around period of when you've been through this experience, and then you have this turnaround point, which is actually usually in Santiago, where you turn around to end up going home, and then how to bring that whole experience back. And so for a lot of Camino resources, we talk a lot about what to bring, what to pack, how to send your pack, staying in hotels, staying in hostels. We talk a lot about preparation. We talk a lot about what it's like on the Camino, but we don't necessarily do a great job of talking about what it's like post Camino. And so I'm not saying it happens to everybody, but yeah, for me and for a lot of people I've chatted with, they said, yeah, it would have been, I'm glad, either they're glad that they took at least a couple days before they went and did the sightseeing thing. And some people just like the processing time, I think, is a lot of what it is as well. So,
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things I think that make my that is different for us why we didn't do that is that one, uh, like we didn't do the processing because I don't know, it wasn't like on the one hand, we didn't set out for like a deep experience. Like it wasn't a deep thing. Like, let's just do this hike. That'll be fun.
mhm.
Let's do this
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah,
And on the other hand, I think we did a lot of the processing during Camino. Like we
yeah,
mostly
absolutely.
time, and I feel like we were processing that. And then because my friend and I were also just products of modern society where we think like, okay, I did that thing. What's next?
What's next?
Not
Yes.
really taking the time to. That is something
Yeah,
that I know is a
yeah.
personality flaw for me that
Mhm.
I don't usually take the time to really reflect. Like, oh, I just did that. Like, all right, I did that. Next thing. So I think that was part of it. Um, one thing I wanted to bring up to ask
Yeah.
you about, and I'm not sure quite where it fits, but I think that yes, most people are really uh open on the Camino and I'm really great, very friendly, save my Camino. But I did notice some judginess in the graffiti. There's a lot of graffiti. But that is one thing that made us laugh because a lot of people would write sayings here and there, but they weren't very deep. They were not inspiring. They were like, think about this. They were just kind of funny things. But one of the things that we noticed with some of it was judgy, where they were saying, um, that if you didn't do the Camino the way you're like where you're carrying your backpack and you're not reserving your lodging ahead of time, that anything short of that is cheating.
Mm.
I literally saw someone write, sending your luggage is cheating, making reservations is cheating, um, not carrying everything with you is cheating. And yeah, I almost started to get at times, I mean, in the end it was fine, but I kept
Mhm.
thinking, we cheating? Are we not having
Yeah.
really the full
Yeah.
Camino experience? But at the same time, you know what? I did that kind of hiking when I was in my 20s. I've been there, I've done that. I don't have the back of a 20-year-old anymore. I can't be carrying all that.
Mhm.
And I don't want to.
Mhm.
Maybe I could, but I just absolutely don't want to. But there was judginess, so then that made me think, are these
Mm.
backpackers that are walking by judging me?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm never gonna see them again, so it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
those were some of the thoughts that started
I
creeping
have
into
I have a friend
my
that
thoughts.
she says when people are judging you, it's not about you, it's actually about them. And that helped me a lot. She's like, their insecurities about whatever, like they feel like they should be doing it like this. They should be suffering, whatever. And I'm not trying to criticize anyone at all. One of the wonderful things about the Camino is that there's not a whole lot of rules. There's no rule that says you have to carry your pack. There's no rule that says you have to stay in a hostel. And in fact, somebody was telling me that when they, bringing back the Camino to the popularity it is today was a conscious effort on the part of Spain, of Spanish tourism, etc. And somebody was telling me they were looking into the history of this, and I need to go back and confirm. And she said when they were putting up the hostels, deciding where to put them, they were basically putting them in places where there weren't other places where pilgrims could stay. So it wasn't that pilgrims, they put them there specifically because that's where the pilgrims are going to stay. They put them there because there was too much of a distance between where there were already options for people to stay. And I always, I joke and I tell people, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella did the Camino, back in whatever, the 1400s. And I doubt they were staying in hostels. I don't think hostels even existed back then. I doubt they were carrying a backpack. And so, I kind of joke with people, if you're talking about, an authentic pilgrimage, what time of, what time of life are you talking about? And also, how authentic do you want to get? Because, we're wearing this dry wicking clothing. We've got hiking boots. We've got, backpacks that fit well on our backs. Like, that didn't exist in the Middle Ages.
Sure.
So how far back do you want to go? What do you want to call authentic? And
I hadn't thought about that.
yeah. And so I usually don't get into these conversations with people because it's just, if they want to think that, that's fine. But I've been through a whole process of myself of processing that, because on my first Camino, I did carry my first couple Caminos. I carried my pack. I mostly stayed in hostels. And part of that was budgetary reasons. I mean, it costs money to send your luggage ahead. It costs more money to stay in a private room than it does in a hostel. There are definitely people, though, that believe that that is the way that people should experience the Camino. And having done it a variety of ways, both, total hostel, total carrying my backpack, and then, staying in high-end hotels, staying in, sending the luggage. Yeah, it's the experiences are different, but I don't feel like any one of them, who am I to judge? And I'll never forget on my first Camino, and I may have told this story before, but I met, my sister introduced me to a friend of hers who had done the Camino. And I did my first Camino back in 2012. No one I knew had ever heard of it, let alone done it. But my sister's friend had done this, and she only did, I think she did like a 100-kilometer route. She stayed in hotels. She sent her pack. And at the time, I was that judging person. And I was like, oh, well, she didn't have, that's not what I'm doing. So, and when I got back, and I was hired to blog for my first Camino as well. And I reflected pretty quickly on that, and how I was judging on the Camino. While I was there, I was realizing, wait a minute, there's so many ways you can do this. And when I got back, I talked to that woman again, and she said, do you know why I chose to send my bag? And I said, no. And she said, I have a child with special needs. And she said, so for the last 20 years, I feel like I've been carrying this huge burden, and the Camino was my chance to let that go. And I was just, this is the first time I probably told that story without crying. I was just so, like, you just don't know. So I also tell people, you don't know why someone's not sending their pack. Maybe there's some reason. Maybe there's not. Who cares? Why is that the concern? That's more the interesting discussion to me. What does that serve us to judge someone? Obviously, yes, you're going to have a different experience. It's absolutely different to carry a backpack and stay in hostels on the Camino de Santiago, no doubt. However, that's not the experience that everyone is going for. And just as you've proven, just because you're carrying a bag or sending your luggage and staying in hotels does not mean you can't have a meaningful experience on the Camino de Santiago.
Oh, and there's some things that, change. It's your body. I mean, there were certain things that I did when I studied abroad in Spain because I didn't have money. I have money now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's a lot of reasons. One of the things that I forgot to mention about why also I decided to do this walk, and also the Grand Canyon, and I already have my next place picked out, which I want to tell you about, is
Yeah.
that it's like the one thing that I do for myself. I'm always doing things for other people. Sometimes that's more because you're a woman and if you have a family. But in general, a lot of us do things for other people. And this is the one thing that I will do every year. just for myself.
Wow.
And that's another big reason that I did that. Like, all right, family, you may not be able to go, but I'm going.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
big reason that I did that walk. And my next walk is going to be in Canada. I think it's in the Quebec province. And the reason that I'm doing this walk is because there's a walk there that's based on the Camino in the Camino, the Spanish Camino. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get to relive a little bit more of the Camino in Canada. So I'm excited to continue the experience. I don't think that I would go. I know that some people keep going back and doing different sections of the Camino. I
Hmm.
don't think I will do that really just because I think there's so many countries to visit in this world that it's hard for me to go back to one that I've already been to.
Hmm.
And I partly went back to Spain also just for the nostalgia factor of it. Like, oh, I've
Yeah.
been here.
Yeah.
Let me see what that's like.
Hmm.
And but I don't see myself going again just for that one. Like, it would be great to check out these other places, but
Yeah.
there's also a lot of other countries that I want to see.
Yeah, and part of me wonders sometimes if it's just because I'm becoming more of a creature of habit, like the Camino is something known to me. And when I am back on it, I'm like, oh, it just kind of calms me. And there are people that, I mean, I've averaged about one a year now, but and there are definitely people that I remember meeting a guy. He says, I do this at least once all he said, I always do one Camino a year, at least a week. He said, it's like my time to reset, my time to reflect, my time to focus, and think about what do I want in the future. Like it was his almost like his yearly retreat. So people,
Right.
you know, do it for different ways too. And I think the other thing is that the fact that you can do a supported Camino, um,
Mhm.
you know, um, opens it up to a lot more people because I've had so many people, and one of the reasons I started the Camino calls is because so many people said to me, I've heard about the Camino, it sounds amazing, but I can't carry a backpack anymore. And I'm like, you don't
Right.
have to. And they had no idea. Or they'll say, I can't stay in a hostel. And I'm like, you don't have to. And they had no idea. And so I want people to be aware of all the ways you can do this walk and that it's available to so many people because of that. And so it looks like, we have any of and I know, Dora, I usually do these for 45 minutes, so I wanna be
Oh,
conscious
sorry.
of your time. No, I'm fine to keep going, but, I'm looking at Debbie, and Mike wrote a comment here that you definitely trained for your walk, and she's wondering what you would recommend. They're gonna do a 10 to 12-day trip. Um, they know about training. They've run a marathon back in the day. And so they're looking for recommendations to train for a Camino for a 10 to 12-day trip. Do you have some advice on that?
Yeah, Rebecca, I said I was going to. I haven't done it yet. Can share
Yeah.
the training that I did. I will tell you that training for a marathon is different than training for Camino, for example, or the Grand Canyon definitely was different. I trained with two friends that had run half marathons. They're like, this was nothing like a marathon. So they're the one, I mean, you can do something every day. The things that I really stuck to were gradually building to like the maximum number of toward the end, you finish up with the maximum number of miles that you're going to walk in one day. Do
Mhm.
that nonstop, just so that because what happens is you will know, oh, this my backpack kind of hurts because I did carry a light backpack
Mhm.
with water, or wow, that muscle's hurting, or okay, there's a shaping. I need to do something about that. So grow to do that. And the other thing is I recommend I stuck to was the stairs, but not stairs at the gym. You need to find a place where you're doing stairs up and then can come back down. And I think that one, the maximum I did was 45 minutes of
Oh, wow.
stairs. That was going up and down. I will share that with you, or
Yeah,
anyone
yeah.
that wants, and they can adapt it to them. There was
Hmm.
one more that I did consistently, but I can't remember now exactly what that was. But those were the two. Like, I got to do the walks, I got to do the stairs. That were
Gotcha,
just
gotcha.
non-negotiable.
Okay, cool. And I will add, I usually tell people the biggest thing is like you were saying, day after day after day, because a marathon is like a 1 day event. The Camino is like, you did a half marathon, but you weren't running. And then the next day you're going to do another one. And the next day you're going to do another one. And so I always say to people, consistency is so much better than just being like, oh, I did a 10-mile hike on Saturday. Well, did you do anything the next day? Maybe you don't have to do 10 miles, but can you at least go out and do another 5 or 6, and build up to that?
Yeah, you
That's
build up to the maximum that you're going to walk, which I think is different than a marathon. I know
mhm,
some I've
mhm.
never run a marathon, never will, but I think you don't actually like run the full race. In this,
Yeah.
you do want to do the whole thing. I see someone asking about was it
Yeah.
safe? We
Mhm.
felt completely safe. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm from an urban city. I'm from Chicago, so I'm always like the street smart, like look around. But everyone was friendly. There was this one weird incident where a driver, it almost seemed like he intentionally swerved toward us to like want to scare
Mhm.
us, and that was
Mhm. Mhm.
really bizarre. But that's the only thing that happened. But there is an app. Um,
Yep.
do you
Ca
remember which app that is?
the Alert Cops app?
The Alert Cops app, and that's
Yep.
something else that you can use. In the moment, I totally forgot to report that in the Alert Cops app, but you can download the app. You can share your GP, you can share your location with police while you're there, and if there's some kind of incident, they will know exactly where you're calling from.
Mhm.
But we, yeah, I wouldn't. Nothing happened that made us feel unsafe.
Yeah, and there's lots of us who have done Caminos on our own. And half of the dozen or so Caminos I've done set off on my own. And again, everyone, I say to people, 500,000 people almost walked into Santiago de Compostela last year. So if you think about a city of 500,000 people, yeah, things are going to happen. There are groups for women on the Camino to find other people to go with. Um, or to talk about safety, to talk about incidences, and so yeah, things happen, but I just don't want people to think that that is a reason not to do the Camino de Santiago. In general, when I lived in Spain, those of us that were there, we would always. It's kind of sad, but we would joke whenever someone posted a question about how safe Spain was. We were like, "Oh, they must be American," um, because if you've been to Spain, if you've lived there, you're like, "Yeah, it's not." I mean, yeah, in Barcelona, you're probably gonna get pickpocketed because it's known for that, but it's not like violent crime like it would be here. I did have, there were definitely times where I was like, "Okay, who knows? Who did I last see that knows where I am?" Things like that. But the other thing to recognize is that if you are doing the 2 most popular Camino routes are the Camino Frances and the Camino Portuguese, and if you're doing those anytime between pretty much May and October, if you need anything, you just stop and another pilgrim is gonna be coming up behind you. They are very popular routes most of the year between May and October. The Primitivo, which you did, Dora, is not as popular, which is why you didn't run into like as many people, say like or like the Camino Inglés or the Camino del Norte is getting more and more popular. So for those of you that joined us late, there are lots of routes to walk on the Camino de Santiago. And when I go over with people, helping them to choose which route is right for them, that's one of the things we talk about. How many people do you want to be around? How, is that something that you want? Are you looking for a more solitary experience, et cetera? So, yeah.
Yeah, I know we're over time. I want to end because I did with quickly
Yes.
with the story that I
Yes.
shared with you, where
Yeah.
I knew about Rebecca's services and I thought that was fantastic. And I wanted to do it because my ideal scenario is someone just tells me, here's your itinerary, go to the airport at this time. And I know that's not quite what you do, but definitely wanted to do that. But my friend said, no, I love planning trips. Let me plan the trips. And I said, okay, but there was one major mistake that I made, which Rebecca would have been able to tell me right away, don't do that. And that would have been, I looked at prices and I saw, oh, you know what? I can save myself $300 by flying into Porto, and Porto to Lugo, where I have to go, is really, it's just a 3.5 hour drive. And if I fly into Madrid with my friend, I gotta get on a train, and that's like 6 hours. Nope, I'm flying into Lugo. Yeah, no, the public transport. There are trains, there are buses, but you have to hit the timing right. It's not, I just assumed that it was going to be like the United States, where I'm like, oh, there's tons of options to get from here to there. And that was not the case. And it ended up taking me, I want to say 8.5 hours to get between where I needed to go. And those are some really important things
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
that's just one example of, I thought, okay, this, I told Rebecca, I said, I mean, I'm not a crier, but I was so frustrated and annoyed, not just with myself, because I really should have researched this more before I went and not just and made those assumptions, but also because I get there and there's no one to ask questions, and the booth to buy tickets is no one's there, and there's no sign telling me where I'm supposed to stand to look for this bus, and is that really the right bus? And that was really just kind of, I think I had a moment of I mean, a private moment of being the ugly American, of being like, "How do you find there? This is that." I was just so angry. I'm like, I think I'm gonna start crying at the airport. Definitely had like a little tear,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
but I got over it. And then in the end, it cost me like $200 to get to where I needed to. And so I didn't save myself much money, and
Hmm.
I made my trip a lot longer than it needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And that is
then
definitely, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was frustrated, and my friend said, "Let's go for some wine." I'm like, okay, let's go for some wine. And then that's when we first discovered wine is super cheap in Spain and tasty. We had no clue. So that was,
For those of you that don't know, you can get a good glass of wine for whatever, $2, $2 US, maybe 2.50.
yeah,
If
that was
I
amazing.
mean, yeah, yeah. And you go in supermarkets, I mean, it's hard to find a bottle that's more than like 10 euros, which is about $12. I mean, that's
That's
expensive.
that. We, at one point at a restaurant, we thought we had been like bamboozled into buying a $21 glass of wine, because when we looked, they're like, oh, the what he recommended, that wine is, it's only a bottle for 21. We didn't realize that that bottle has so many pores and that you're only paying for the pour you get.
Ah, okay.
Amazing.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so I think all of the bottles of all the wine we drank. So I think that's fine. You know what? There was a time and place for me to do these hikes in the Grand Canyon with, 30 pounds on my back and eating ramen, because I could cook it on the stove. That had its time and place, and that was fine. But I much preferred this of like having a good meal with some good wine at the end of each day. But
Uh,
yes, I think it would have been a much better experience. It was still fun, but I really think it would have been much better if we had an expert guiding us through that process.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, Dora, I want to thank you once again very much for joining us. I feel like I could talk to you for a whole other hour. And I thank everyone who joined us live. And
Yes.
I will be,
It was so fun.
um, yeah, I will be posting the recording for this. Once again, I'm Rebecca Weston from the Camino Calls, and every week I send out a newsletter with Camino information in it. And every week I do one of these wonderful interviews with people who have done the Camino or are planning to do the Camino or know something related to the Camino. So if you or someone you know would like to join us live here on Substack, feel free to let me know. So thank you again, Dora, and I wish you a buen Camino.
Thank you so much. Buen camino.